Hello Year 10 and welcome to Sequences Lesson 2. This is going to be still on finding the nth term of an arithmetic sequence today, but we're going to look at sequences that are decreasing. But first of all, we're going to start by going through the answers to yesterday's lesson. So the first one is going up by 2 every time. So you should be comparing to the 2 times table across the top. And then you should notice that this is 1 less than the 2 times table. So 2n subtract 1. The next one, we're going up by 3 every time. And then we have to add 2 to the 3 times table to get our sequence. Then the next one, we're going up by 5s. And this is 1 more than the 5 times table. The next, we're going up by 11 every time. So we're going to compare to the 11 times table. And every time is 7 less than the corresponding term in the 11 times table. So 11n subtract 7. Then we're going up by 9, and this is 3 more than the 9 times table. So those are all the ones that I would expect you to be able to do for sure, and these ones are slightly more difficult. This one only because it starts with negatives, so we can still see we're going up by 3 every time, so we know it's going to be 3n add or subtract something, and actually we're subtracting 11 to get from 3 to negative 8. Here we're going up by 0.4 every time, and this is 1 less than the 0.4 times table. And then this one is the trickiest. You're adding 2 quarters every time. So you want to write the 2 quarters times table across the top, which would be 2 quarters, 4 quarters, 6 quarters, 8 quarters, 10 quarters. And then hopefully you can see that everyone is 1 less. So it's 2 quarters n, but of course 2 quarters is a half. So ideally you would want it written as a half n subtract a quarter. But if you wrote 2 quarters of n subtract a quarter, that is absolutely brilliant at this stage. Okay, so today's lesson we're going to develop these ideas to look at the nth term of a decreasing arithmetic sequence. And of course we're going to start exactly the same as you always do with sequences by looking at the term-to-term rule. And we can see that we're subtracting 4 every time. Now, when our common difference is positive, when we're adding a consistent amount, we compare to that times table. And this is the same, really. We're going to compare to the negative 4 times table. So here, I'm going to have negative 4. And then the second term in the negative 4 times table will be negative 8. And then negative 12, negative 16, negative 20. And how do I get to these terms from the term number? Well, just like with any times table, I'm going to multiply n by negative 4. And so my nth term for the negative 4 times table is negative 4n. So now I've got to work out what am I adding on each time. And again, you're going to find this tricky if you're not super confident with negative numbers. So what do I add to negative 4 to get 6? Well, down the bottom here, I've done a little number line. So here's negative 4. I have to add 4 to get to 0. And then I have to add 6 to get to 6. So all together, I've added 10. And so my nth term is negative 4n add 10. Now, if you wrote that in an exam, that would be full marks and really well done. But just a bit of a sort of a mathsy point, we don't really like to start with a negative if we can help it. Of course, it's possible you could have 2 negative terms here. But if you've only got 1, then what you can do is write that in the opposite order so that it just looks a bit neater and tidier. So this is the perfect answer, but this is fine also. Okay, so here's another example of a decreasing sequence, which I'd like you to pause the video and try. So you're going to start by finding the common difference, and you're expecting it to be negative. That tells you what negative times table to compare it to, and from there you should be able to work out the nth term. So pause the video and see how you get on. Okay, so you should have found that we're decreasing by 5 every time. So the common difference is subtract 5, and that tells me to compare to the negative 5 times table. So negative 5, negative 10, negative 15, negative 20, and negative 25. And I'm multiplying the term number by negative 5 every time. So the nth term is negative 5n. And now I've just got to work out what I've got to add to get from the negative 5 times table to my sequence. So if we imagine a 0 in between, I'm going to have to add 5 to get to 0 and then 9 to get to 9. And 5 and 9 make 14. So I must be adding 14. So my nth term is negative 5n add 14. But again, it looks a little bit neater if I write that the other way around. Okay, here's a decimal example, as we were looking at last lesson. You should have a good idea of what to do here. It works exactly the same way, but you're going to have to deal with a decimal times table. So pause the video and give this one a try. Okay, so you should have found that we are subtracting 0.2 every time. So I want to compare to the negative 0.2 times table. So negative 0.2, negative 0.4, etc. And I'm timesing by negative 0.2. So my nth term is negative 0.2n. And then I've got to work out what I'm adding every time. Now, personally, I think this term is the easiest one to work with. It doesn't matter whether you do this one or the next one or this one at the end, because I can see that I need to add 1 to get to 0, and then I need to add 0.5. So altogether I'm adding 1.5. Now that's true here as well. I'm adding 0.2 to get to 0, and then I'm adding 1.3. But it's just perhaps a little bit easier to see over here. So I'm adding 1.5. My nth term is negative 0.2n add 1.5. But again, that's a little neater if I write it the other way around. Okay, so here's your task for today. These are all decreasing sequences, same as last lesson. These are the ones that I would definitely expect you to be able to do. And then these are ones that are perhaps just slightly trickier. You'll need to pause the video and do these in your books, remembering to show your common difference underneath, write your times table across the top, and then use that to help you find the nth term.